Welcome to the last chapter of economics. We deal with monetary policy. Some say it's the most boring, but I would encourage you to think about this. Some people argue that monetary policy is more powerful than the government, and maybe it hasn't impacted you a lot so far in your life, but every day from when you start graduating high school, the minute you incur debt or the minute you start to save money and gain through savings, you're affected by an important number controlled by monetary policy. That number is interest rates. And influencing or changing interest rates encourages or discourages spending in an economy. And lots of people argue is more impactful than fiscal policy, which is changing government spending and taxes. And the reason for that is it takes time for fiscal policies to start enacting or impacting the economy. Sometimes 1 to 3 years. So monetary policy and interest rates. What we want to do is figure out who runs monetary policy and the tools that are used by monetary policy to expand and contract, just like fiscal policy, expand and contract the economy. And then how would monetary policy, if you were in charge, how would you enact it to change a measure of the economy? How would you fix the economy? So are interest rates good or bad? I hope eventually you argue with yourself and you arrive at both. It depends. It depends on if interest rates are high. So high interest rates are bad for borrowers. You owe more money over time, but are great for savers. If you're saving money in a bank and earning interest, or you have a government bond and you're earning interest, or you have an IRA or whatever type of investment, you're earning interest. So you want higher interest rates. But what if they're low? Well, lower interest rates are good for borrowers. They owe less over time if they borrow money, and bad for savers. Sometimes interest rates are so low that you might not even want to keep money in a bank. There's countries that have negative interest rates, which is a crazy topic to think about, and we don't have enough time to go into. But in a scenario like this, would the economy speed up or slow down? Well, there's less savers probably, or they're not earning as much, but there's lots of borrowing. So our economy would speed up. It'd expand. Why would we want to expand? Well, we're probably in something called a recession. Why would we want higher interest rates? Well, maybe we're going too fast. How would you know we're going too fast? Look at unemployment and inflation, our measures, and we'd want to raise, or the central bank would want to raise interest rates to slow the economy down. So this is a federal funds rate or interest rates, same idea, in the United States, and we could see they're slowly climbing over the past year. What does that mean about our economy previous? Think Great Recession. Why would they be so low? What are we trying to encourage, and why are they steadily raising or rising? Think about the lowering unemployment rate. Our unemployment rate right now is the lowest it's been in the last 20 years, 30 years. I told you this course would explain life. So the Federal Reserve has nothing to do with the government except who's ever in charge of the Federal Reserve is appointed by the president. And if you're in charge of the Federal Reserve, your term spans presidents. By that I mean it is longer than presidential terms. The whole idea is that the chairman of the Federal Reserve, who's ever in charge of our country's central bank, which is in Washington, D.C., should not be influenced by politics. They're separate from it. It's the whole idea of them running opposite or apart from each other. And there's regional banks. There's one in downtown Minneapolis. And the whole job of the Federal Reserve is to control interest rates. They're monitoring banking conditions. They're looking to limit unemployment, limit inflation, and promote growth. And by controlling the money supply, how much money is out there, you directly impact interest rates, which will impact borrowing and saving. So the tools of monetary policy are kind of like fiscal. Okay, the whole idea again is to either increase or decrease the money supply. Now, these are terms that you don't talk about at home, so we just need to unpack what these mean. Hopefully, you can use them the same as you would taxes and spending. Okay. So by changing monetary policy, we change the supply of money, which changes interest rates. Monetary policy is run by the Fed, or the Federal Reserve. It's run by a country's central bank. Ours is called the Federal Reserve in the United States. And you change the money supply, which impacts interest rates, a key saving and borrowing or spending number. Visually, you're changing the supply of money to impact interest rates. You don't have to graph this, but for our visual learners, there you go. So what if our economy is going to slow? We're going to have something called an expansionary monetary policy or an easy money policy. We basically want to get more money out there to lower interest rates to fight a recession. The more money that is going around in the economy, the more that will be spent and it'll get multiplied over and over, and we should expand. Versus if we're going too fast, we're going to have something called a tight money policy or contractionary monetary policy. What's going to happen then? Well, we'll decrease the amount of money that's flowing in the economy, which in turn will slow the amount of spending by raising interest rates, and it will be used to fight inflation. So visually, all we're doing, monetary policy is changing the money supply. In headlines in the news, you'll read about interest rates and the Fed raises interest rates, the Fed lowers interest rates. Well, actually what happens first is the Federal Reserve changes the money supply. Right is more money, left is less money, which impacts the equilibrium interest rate. That in turn impacts the economy. It's just easier for us to print headlines that talk about the interest rate because every one of us will deal with interest rates in our life. So let's break down these tools really quickly, make them make sense, and then we'll practice. So open market operations is the buying and selling of bonds, government bonds, used the most. The easiest way to remember this is buy big, sell shrink. So the Federal Reserve, put yourself in the mindset of the central bank. Why would you want to buy a bond? You buy a bond and give people cash, or an individual buys a bond and you give up cash. There's now less money. So, but keep yourself in the central bank role here. Buy bonds from people and give them cash. Sell bonds to people and take their cash. It speeds up or slows down the economy. Tool number two of monetary policy is the reserve requirements. So how much banks have to hold in their vaults? It's pretty crazy, but a $100 deposit can create $900 worth of stuff in our economy. How is that possible? Banks are required legally to hold on to 10% of every deposit. How do banks make money? They give out loans. So the bank holds $10 and loans out $90. Monetary policy can increase the money supply by lowering that reserve requirement. Hey, only hold on to 5%. You hold on to 5, you loan out 95. Now you can make $950 worth of stuff in our economy. Or a contractionary policy, raising that rate, hold on to 50%. Hold on to $50, now you can only loan out 50, you only make $500 worth of stuff. It's how monetary policy is probably more powerful than fiscal policy. There's the cycle. Just if that doesn't make sense, pause this, read through that scenario. The last one is a discount rate. So it's a fee banks are charged to borrow money. Why would a bank need to borrow money? They don't have enough reserves. If you think about it like an ATM fee, it kind of makes sense. So if I want there to be more money in circulation, the Federal Reserve would make that rate lower, a lower fee to borrow money. That would encourage banks to borrow, give out loans, and then borrow money from other banks or the Federal Reserve. But if we wanted to slow the economy down, we would make that rate higher, or the Federal Reserve would make that rate higher. What would that do? It would make it would make banks think about loaning out money. They probably loan out less, or if they did loan out money, they'd be charged a higher fee, which would slow down the economy. So with those tools in mind, we'll get some practice sorting out scenarios and what would monetary policy do in a couple scenarios.